Hello.
Awesome. Hello. I was just didn't even check my video because I'm always not displaying like the self image that you have in Zoom. I get too distracted, so it's up to you to tell me if I have something in my face.
You have, I'm seeing eyes, one nose.
What?
Yes. And it's looking wonderful. The aesthetics are, and the vibes are pristine.
Okay. We can work with that, I guess.
So we're naming it nothing. Like we'll name this podcast later.
Yeah.
And then there's the thing from, is it the Bhagavad Gita? Is
It's
that
I
this?
guess.
Yeah, it's a thing, but there's the one with Ganesha where he's like, or no, Arjun is like, I don't know where to start with the story. So like maybe I should start with myself.
Hmm.
So like who are you? Who is Magdalena?
Hmm. I guess today I would say I'm on fire. As I've told you,
Yeah.
I'm here with unburn right now, so that's one of my key characteristics for today. But on other days, and on many days, I'm an art therapist in training. And I'm also a designer. I used to be a designer. I don't really work in the field anymore. But then I'm also a scientist in the sustainability sciences. And this is where I have like been working for the most part in the last few years. And right now I'm transitioning to art therapy and doing both in parallel. I guess that's it. I would really also like to be an artist, but there's no time
Mm-hmm.
at this stage in life. I hope that there's going to be a stage in life where I can be an artist.
Yeah. And like with visuals, right? Like visual.
Yeah.
Yeah, like paint and
Painting,
yeah.
maybe sculpture. I'm not a dancer. Like I do dance, but not as a performance thing. Also not a musician for performance. So I guess yeah, it's visuals for sure.
Incredible. Who am I? Well, how do we say it? Freiburg?
I would. Yeah.
Yeah, Freiburg at a union conference. Um, yeah, I work in therapy. That's my passion. Um, and I really love dreams and emotion. Those are like my passions, dreams, emotion, and yeah, dance too. So I think we're aligned very much on I think my desire and fascination has been going recently towards the intersection of art and healing.
Mm.
And then with us coming together, um, there's this interesting archetype of enlightenment or illumination,
Oh yeah.
specifically around like you're a scientist, and we met at a conference trying to help analytical psychology become more scientific, basically. And
Mm.
so that topic has been like very alive for me
Mm.
since we've been meeting and talking, because it's like all the classic enlightenment scientists, are like such magicians and wizards,
Oh yeah.
and I like them. So yeah, that topic. What do you think about this idea of art and healing, though? Like art and healing.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's up with that?
Hmm. Sorry, was there a question or did you
Like,
want?
what's up with that? It's a very open question.
Hmm. Oh my God, it's such a difficult question because what's art? I'm
Mm,
thinking it has, for me personally, art has a lot to do with beauty, and I
mm,
think beauty is something that heals.
Mm.
Like if you are in the presence of something that is beautiful, that makes you more whole, which is, I guess, like the process of healing is to become more whole, or heil, which is in German like also whole. And it doesn't even have to be something that's visually beautiful, but it could be like something, a perfect match, for example, two people meeting and it's a beautiful meeting, or
Mm.
there's a beautiful atmosphere when people are having a good time. And these are all things which heal. So this is the aspect of beauty in art, but then also art is about expression, which is another aspect of becoming more whole, because if something is within you, like inside of you, and you don't express it, it's just taking place in one side of reality, because there's always the insides and the outsides. And ideally, I guess those two dimensions, they are communicating, you know,
Mm.
they influence each other. And then if there's something that's only within you and it never has any, it doesn't find like a stream to convey itself, then
Mm.
that is something that will make you ill, or that will have an ill effect on you. And there's another thing I wanted to say, but didn't, I don't remember it right now. What do you think?
Well, I'm very stimulated by like what I'm hearing from you. One, this image of beauty being like unifying, almost like it draws us to an inner wholeness, like the experience of beauty being
Yeah.
healing in itself. And then there's also an aspect that I was hearing you talk about, which is expression. Like maybe there's something inside or even something we've encountered on the outside that we really
Yeah.
need to say.
Yes.
And
Actually, that's what I want to add, is it's not only expression, like to put something out of yourself, but also impression. Something enters you. And of course, that's a super important aspect of arts. Like you see it, you hear it, you experience it, and then the impression of it does something to you.
mm, and I could see that to me, this point about impression, really stimulates me when we think about like how powerful expressive arts can be for like trauma healing. Because I wonder about this, like we've got this concept of beauty, but then there's also this concept of sublime, the sublime.
Hmm.
And like I think sometimes with trauma, what's difficult is the impression of like dealing with something that is so big or evil even, and just like encountering it. And in a sense, it kind of feels like it's different, but it kind of has a rhyme to what it's like to see something beautiful. Like if you see like a hurricane, for example, I was in a hurricane and I wouldn't quite call it beautiful, but it was definitely like something like that. It was like there was an awe-inspiring quality that
Yeah.
and I think when people encounter really dangerous situations or people, like actually being able to make sense of that encounter and
Yeah.
feel it and e- express the impression you got from that encounter is like really nice. It helps me at least feel some sense of agency and take back some of the my internal power.
Mhm.
And yeah, this is a very interesting aspect of art, I think.
Definitely. Like I've been wondering about a concept that I just came across. The thing is called, I hope it's called like that because I'm not sure. funny poesis.
Mm.
Like it's a word that was put together like from two Greek words, and it's like a new word. So, and it's supposed to describe when things are coming together in the unseen, like also the sublime. You were mentioning the sublime. It's something that's below the surface, right? It's not really tangible, is it? But it's there and it's real, but it's not seen. And then when things come together, form something that is life-giving or
Mm.
creative, or it adds to healing, then this is called aphanipoiesis. Because something comes together, you can't see it, but all of a sudden, there's something beautiful emerging. And this word is supposed to be the opposite of something that is insidious, which is also unseen. And like many factors go together unseen, like not noticed, but then all of a sudden something bad happens, some danger occurs, or some harm is done.
Mm.
And I really like the idea of like there's something opposite of insidious, you know? And this is what came to my mind when you were talking about the hurricane. I've also been in a small hurricane, like not a big one, but I've seen one, and I know what you mean. Like there's an awe in it, just as there is in beauty. So it's maybe two sides of the coin, as is the insidious quality of something bad is being created, and also a funny poiesis where something good is created, but you can't really pin it down to the factors of what's being created.
Wow. Yeah, this is a really interesting. I like this juxtaposition between insidious, like something underneath the surface in the background that's helping or could be good instead of something to be afraid of, is like really interesting. And the potential of a hurricane, in the case that I'm thinking about, it was Hurricane Gonzalo in the Caribbean. I was in St. Thomas at the time. And there were really bad aspects of it. You know, people had died, which was tragic, and they were suffering. And on the other hand, there were moments of like solidarity and love. And it almost felt like a summer camp at certain points. Like life was on hold, and it was almost communal and beautiful at certain points. And so that circumstance of the hurricane definitely brought, and there were, it showed the insidious side that like, oh, we weren't ready for civilization to crash for a week, but then it also washed away certain aspects of our lives that were ossified and stale.
Yeah.
uh, um
Mhm.
I have this tattoo. Have I showed you? I don't know if you can really see it. I hope Jupiter will forgive us. Oh, bringing like Venus into the,
That's me. So you want to grab it?
yeah, there we go. um It's basically the sign of Venus with roses wrapped around it.
Ah.
And I put it on my wrist because I I try I have a part of myself that wants to be productive. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I really want to orient myself towards beauty. And I think there's something, this is like interesting. Wonder what you think about this as an artist. Like I find that sometimes having a plan is like counter indicated towards beauty. Like if I'm trying to create something beautiful and it's too intentional, it can be very boring and stale. And there's something, I think of beauty more as a birthing process as opposed to like a, I don't know, whatever the opposite of birthing is, like a making. Um, and I just kind of have to like get out of the way a little bit and incubate. But then I can't decide what the baby's going to look like really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. First of all, I think it's a great tattoo. I didn't know about it. You have it when we met?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was cold back then. You didn't have.
Yeah, I was hiding.
Because we were talking about beauty, and then this tattoo comes up, and Venus is like, she's representative of beauty, like she's an archetype of beauty. And then about the birthing process, I do have had artistic experiences where what you just said was confirmed, because those images of mine that I hold most dearly, they came to be in a spontaneous process. Whereas the ones that I planned, they have their own sort of beauty, but it's a different kind. Like you see the intentionality behind it.
Mm.
But then those spontaneous ones, they are way more forceful.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have impact. While the things that you plan, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I never thought about this too much.
I like the metaphor of the seed, though, because yeah, we could develop a garden, and that's like a good blend of these two kind of modes, because I think the type of art I was talking about was more that soil, like sitting back and like letting the wildness sprout. But there is like a element of like taking a seed and plunging it into the earth.
Yeah.
And that kind of force is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hey,
yeah.
you were saying that you work with trauma, right? Maybe do you want to give some insight about this? Like, do you work with certain groups of people or certain aspects of trauma?
Sure. Yeah, I have had nightmares since I was a child. So that when I got into the therapy world, I just had an affinity for working with nightmares. And also in our field, um, and this is very apropos of like what we're looking to do with analytical psychology and like a research base, because a lot of the research on nightmares and the treatment for nightmares, one, medicine doesn't seem to be very farmers. There's not very many good pharmacological interventions for nightmares. Two, a lot of the more psychosocial interventions around like talking about them, the emotions, and a lot of the major approaches don't deal with the dream content. They deal with, strategies for sleep hygiene,
Yeah.
like trying to eat different things, and they're not really dealing with the nightmare on its own terms. And I've always wanted to deal with the images, from the psyche as important as like, no, like we need to go towards the nightmare, not away from it to, to get through this encounter you're having. So anyways, this has been effective for me in my practice, and a lot of my peers have referred me nightmare cases. So over the last years, I've been working with many, and nightmares are very often will come out of trauma. And so many patients, there are people who just seemingly spontaneously nightmares emerge. And that is a thing, but more commonly there's a traumatic incident. And then the nightmares begin,
Yeah.
or they're haunting the person years later.
Mm.
Um,
You know what comes to mind is because I've also been working with dreams recently. I've had this project in my art therapy training where I had a small group of people who we were making this group about dream work, or working with dreams by using creative material.
Whoa.
And then I've like written the documentation for this project, and I've done some research on it. And in this, during this process, it came up that C.G. Jung, who is, of course, the founder of analytical psychology, so he was actually questioning Sigmund Freud, because Freud was also about going away from the original dream content. Freud's method was to have his patients associate freely of what came up when they were telling their dreams, and then basically they moved away from the dream to some other topic and then dealt with the thing that came up. But then Jung, he was really like questioning this, and he was wondering, like, or his thought was, it must not be arbitrary what we dream about. But he had a strong intuition that there was something to the content of the dream as well, and he was really trying to stay with the content and to make patients really circumambulate the content of the dream. And this is exactly your idea, right? So
Yes.
when you had it, like, did you know about Jung? That
Yeah. I'm very self-consciously, this is connecting to Jung's idea of this. You nailed it with the circumambulation. Like, it's a guided technique. Association is a very powerful tool. Um, However, like you're saying, and like Jung was saying to Freud, it can trail us away from the dream. So there's this circling. You can associate, like, oh, this dream reminds me of my mother. And what does it mean that there's a snake in relationship to my relationship with the mother? You know, it's a circling, and it's like, oh, well, I had that memory of XYZ when, I was a kid. Okay, how does that relate to the snake? And just kind of staying the discipline is the kind of like a hub and spoke, like
Yeah.
the image is a picture of the current situation, and the associations are your life. And so we're relating the current situation to life, as opposed to just going into the trauma of the complex, because then we lose that healing aspect of the snake, like we're getting away from the snake.
Yeah. And you know what? Because we were talking about beauty and beauty emerging spontaneously, I think there's so much beauty in dreams.
Absolutely.
For that exact reason, because it's a creative, like a creative act of our consciousness. To have a dream is a creative act. And you don't do it with your conscious, you don't plan it. There's no way to plan out the details of a dream. I think even if you're lucid dreaming, there's some sort of, there's details that come in without you having or wanting them there. So there's something about the dream image that is healing because it emerges spontaneously, right?
I think so.
And it has some, and for its spontaneity and for its unplannedness, or I think it's really a process of aphanipoiesis, or to use that complicated word again, but it's like there's things coming together in the unseen, below the surface, not known where they come from. There's many different factors, and then this dream image emerges.
Mm.
And we can look at it and see aspects that we missed in our conscious life about ourselves and about our life, and draw some conclusions that might support the healing process.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is like a really brilliant line of inquiry. And to go back into like dream technique for a second, let's just say there's a case where the dream feels very insidious, and it doesn't feel beautiful, or it doesn't
Yeah.
seem, it feels very scary. I think one of the first things we can do, especially with nightmares, if we're more oriented towards healing and even beauty, is to find the help
Mm.
in the dream. Like oftentimes the dreams, even the most scary ones, will have help.
Yeah.
And the energy might be going to the insidious aspect, but if we can like start with the help, that can help us face the insidious nature of it and get to that piosis. Yeah, I'll have to practice that. But and sometimes like this is a very powerful thing in trauma healing. If there is no help, like
Mm.
oftentimes, especially with childhood abuse, there was no help. And so a powerful technique can be the help. We need to imagine the help.
Yeah.
And so we can bring help into the image. And that's where the more creative process can start. It's like, no one was here to help me. I'm being buried alive. You know,
Mm.
I want a hawk to come and lift me from the grave.
Mm.
Beautiful. And we can create that and feel that in the body, what it's like to be lifted. Um, yeah, or defended, like
Mm.
protection. We could feel protection. Um, Whatever the psyche is trying to evoke from us. I did want to mention that to this point about creativity is like sometimes we do have to use the conscious if the situation is such that there is no help in the psyche. That's very interesting information. Um, and so we might have to meet it halfway and say, okay, I'm
Mm.
going to bring help into this situation if that's what I want.
Yeah, for sure. We also use this in art therapy, because an image is like a dream. It's like, it depends on the technique you use to create it with, but then usually an image shows content from the unconscious. And so you can use this content to learn about yourself. And then, for example, if it does show many detrimental aspects, then we can, of course, ask what this image needs to be more balanced, to be more, to feel more manageable, maybe to feel more, to feel less threatening. All of the things you would use to look for helpful images, helpful resources, or helpful figures to come in. You can, of course, also put them into the image
Mm.
to like give yourself a manifestation. Um, I don't know, because yeah, I think it's about this communication between the conscious and the unconscious. It always goes both ways.
Absolutely. I think okay, what's coming up for me, Magdalena, is exactly this thing with conscious and unconscious. And I think what we're doing is blurring a little bit. Like, I think sometimes, especially in modern life, in the West, especially, categories can be very rigid,
Mm-hmm.
like conscious, unconscious, and they're like walled off rooms, you know? Like when I'm sleeping, it's unconscious. When I'm awake, it's conscious. And I think the actual reality is much more fluidity. And I think, yes, dreams are a state, or sleep is a state where the unconscious is very active. But there is a conscious element to it. And like, you know, working, we could go into the language of like brainwaves probably if we wanted to, but you know, while working on a highly specialized task, you know, the conscious mind is very active, but there is the unconscious is there, and it does have its say. And I think like in our practice as like people interested in analytical psychology, like kind of bringing consciousness into the sleep, but then also unconsciousness into the waking is very important. And that's where I think creativity and art is a very powerful tool.
For
Well,
sure.
you know, it can be highly conscious, but it can also be very spontaneous. And this is a way we can start dialoguing
Mm-hmm.
while we're not sleeping. And I think, Yeah, it's something I say to people who don't remember their dreams and they want to, is just wake up and just start writing. Like, you don't have to remember. The fidelity is not as important as people often think. You know, it's like, I'm interested in what you come up with in the minutes after waking up just as much as I'm interested in an exact, like, journalistic representation of what happened when you were sleeping. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think we can blur a little bit if we want to in our experiments, blur the
I
conscious and
really like
unconscious.
that. Yeah, I really like that. And it brings me back to the image of like the sublime. What's beneath the surface and what's up the surface. It's also very di- dichotomal. Is that a word? Like there's dichotomy in the
Dichotomy.
yeah in the below and in the above, but then there's also like this layer, and I don't know. Maybe we can extend its hate. There's this layer of where there might be a bit of steam,
Mm-hmm.
where water blurs with air, and it's like it's a transition phase from the conscious to the unconscious. And as I was talking about this concept of funny poiesis, hmm, I'm thinking analytical psychology is so great because it's trying to like widen this area of where those two dimensions meet. And this gives you much more information about both of these dimensions. And it's also an area where I think creativity lives there.
In the steam.
In the steam, yeah. Like in the it's the what's the word? Like the connection of opposites. The conjunction of opposites. And this is where creativity lives and where new things emerge. And this concept of funny poiesis, it's interestingly used also for sustainability sciences because, and I just find this so interesting. This is why I'm telling you this. You know, in sustainability sciences, we like most of the models of change are very linear. They are based on the presumption that there is a status quo, and then we have a goal, and then we need to find a way to get from A to B. So we make a plan, and then we proceed with the plan and reach the goal. But this concept of the new is emerging from spontaneously, and also the new is always, it draws from sources that are unseen.
Mm-hmm.
This concept has inside of it the core idea that a system needs to be ready before it can change.
Mm.
Something needs to have happened before it actually changes. And there's this concept of readiness, like to make an organism or a system or a living being ready for change. So many things need to happen, and many of them are not visible. You know, for example, people go to therapy, like they have many sessions. And at some point they get better. And before that, you may have had many sessions where you didn't see any improvements on the surface. But then, for example, all of a sudden they have a beautiful dream instead of a nightmare where, I don't know, some helping figure shows up or whatever, and then something changes. And I really like this idea that, like, to become ready is the prerequisite of change.
Beautiful.
And the readiness, like I think readiness is created in the STEAM area. It's because of exchange between the dimensions.
And like giving that process of readiness, like in that there's kind of that drudgery almost, it's due. and its importance. Like, I think the change itself is really, those moments of intense transformation. Um, like a controversial figure, Lenin from Russia, said like some years or some what's he say? Something like some years nothing happens and some days decades happen, you know, but all that those years where nothing was happening was like a readying process for a big change that's happening, whether it's insidious or good, you know?
Related. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That puts it exactly. That's spot on, is I'm trying to say. Um,
Yeah. And yeah, so giving that process and making space for the readying process, I think is really interesting. Um, and then,
yeah.
and then this, not having a plan or like planning's great, right? Like there's nothing wrong with planning, but just the method, all like in a systemic change or in something that's very complex and interdependent, maybe that's not the right method.
Exactly. So this is the hypothesis of this concept, is that it's nice to have a plan, but actually what you want to do is to get ready for change and to leave also open which change will then come about. Um, because change will happen naturally as a result of being ready for change, because things have been working within you, or the system has been like rearranging itself in the invisibles, in the invisible dimensions of it. And I really like that. I don't know. It's refreshing to me to know that like these people who develop this, they are sociologists.
Mhm.
You know Gregory Bateson? And yeah, so I think it's his daughter or even his
Oh,
granddaughter who
okay.
developed this. And it's a I don't know, I find it also even a bit philosophical, because it um it puts a perspective on how consciousness works and how we as a living system basically have similar qualities as consciousness. But in any case, it's so fascinating to me that like sociologists who deal with these questions of how do systems change and how can we like make change happen that is maybe needed in the future, they actually discover that, wait a minute, we can't actually plan this too well, but change emerges when the system will be ready, just as an individual will change when she or he or they are ready to do it for whatever reasons. And those are like very unseen. And what fascinates is that I think that this is also one of the core characteristics of analytical psychology, because there's this term of individuation, like which should be the goal of a person's life, is to get more towards her true self, like big S self. Um, but you can't really plan what this is going to be. Like I can't say like myself is A, B, and C, and I want to do X, Y, Z, and then I plan my life. And if I'm there, then this is my true self.
Mm.
No, it works that way. It's much more that you discover things about yourself, then you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow, that's weird. So, oh, well, this is how I am or who I am. So you change, but not for the plan you made, but for the sake of changing, I guess, or for the sake of individuating.
Mm. Yes. And it's bigger than maybe there are unknowns that change is that there's something in the unknown that's calling us towards it, that it's
Mhm.
kind of impossible to plan for because it's unknown. There's something about the self that, if planning necessarily, if we plan, we're going to go somewhere that's in our consciousness, right? Like in our conscience.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
it can't be unconscious. It's only the failures of that plan that can really take us into the unknown. Um, so that's why I'm not anti-planning, but if when the plan messes up, it's good to follow that screw up. It's good to be like, oh, this is interesting.
I'm even pro planning, because I
Yeah.
think our conscious mind needs something to hold on to. But then while you plan and pursue your goals, life happens and
There's another philosopher, an American philosopher, who says, everyone has a plan for me until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson, the boxer. It's like, yeah, like life is like that punch, and it's like, okay, like, am I still going to go with this plan, or am I going to run away, or I'm going to go in a different direction? Um, uh, and we're talking about, you and I have been talking about transformation and change, and also smelling. And I think, like, because one of the questions that comes up with this line of inquiry, it's like, okay, Brian, Magdalena, great, but like, how do I not just spin in circles? If I don't have, and I think like, I like this idea of smelling, the smell of change. It's like cooking. It's like, oh, something seems interesting or bad in this direction. And
Yep.
so I need to like calibrate based on kind of a more holistic sensing almost. Um, and I remembered one client or one patient that, I would have never planned for this. They were in a deep, dark, or really gray depression, I should say. I shouldn't say dark, but I mean, very flat, like very, gray and pretty, hopeless. And it was challenging even for me. Um, and I remember after months of this slog that we were going through, there's just this very faint smile. It was extremely faint, but I realized in that moment that it was the first time I'd ever seen them smile. And it wasn't like a huge, like, I'm healed, but it was the psyche saying that this is a new day. It was kind of like in the Bible with the bird after the flood, like the very small sign. And that was the herald of change for them. And so I think like that's something we could also, if we want the conscious mind to have something to do, is like pay attention very closely to
Yeah.
small signs of change. I think we miss opportunities all the time because we're not humble enough. We're like, oh, like I need this huge sign of revolution and millions of people in the street before I actually do something. But if like three people are like, I've had enough of this, like that's a beautiful sign. And we could pay attention to it if we wanted to. And who knows we don't know what will happen with that, but maybe something very important. There's something thinking about smallness.
Yeah. Could you describe for me what smell is? What's the quality of smell compared to other senses? Like, why is it the smell of change? Why does this make a difference?
Mm. Smell for me is my sense of smell is very strong, and dominant. Uh, and the quality of it is so much different than, sight. One, it's much closer. Like it's very immediate and it's very discriminating. Um, and it's takes a lot of practice to really, get beyond like good and bad. Like this smells good, this smells bad, because it's very visceral and there's a disgust response and like a pleasure response. that is, it's very affective smell.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's quite unconscious in a lot of ways. Like people, it'll bring up memories and will link very, very strongly to things. I've somehow developed, like I have very smell links to emotion, like emotions very,
Mhm.
very much for me. When people are feeling certain emotions, I will smell certain things. Shame in particular is like a infected smell for me. Um, Smells like a kind of like, this is maybe TMI, but kind of like an ear infection or something. It's very sick, sweet, kind of like this stagnant smell. And yeah, it's like a really interesting. If you look at like dogs too, it's like the phenomenology of animals is kind of a weird study. But the idea of seeing with your nose to me is very evocative. Um, and what that must be like. Uh, and if you see a dog will get like obsessed with a certain smell and like burrow into it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's a good quality for change makers and therapists to cultivate is this, yeah.
I think smell is also something that's one of the most embodied senses. As you were saying, also, it's very close because you can see things that are far away without moving even
Mhm.
towards them. And they can stay there and you can stay here. And then sound is similar, like it's it can cross great distance without really getting closer. But then touch is way closer, of course. Like if you touch something, then you are there with the thing. But then the smell, maybe it's even closer than touch because to smell something, those molecules, they actually have to enter your body. They have to enter your body and then to connect like to the tissue that's inside of you. So you're basically probably also ingesting some of these molecules to even be able to smell them. So
Good point.
you're basically, this thing is within you when you smell it. It's not like even at surface, like with touch, but it's entered you.
Yeah, it's a lovely point. I wonder if like there's some kind of connection that we can make with, we're talking about the spectrum of consciousness or the conscious and the unconscious. And it seems like we could look at the senses kind of like that in a sense, like there's a spectrum of, yeah, closeness maybe, or the extra. And I was thinking like it's much harder to record smell. Like I don't think you really can you? Like you, because your point with the molecules.
Wow. It's an interesting, I don't know. I was doing an internship in this institution in Amsterdam, which they had a smell, like a laboratory for smells.
Mhm.
It was weird. Like I didn't understand it, but they had like these small, um, what are they called? Like these, chemists glasses.
Oh, like a beaker or something.
Pictures. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thousands of them. Like the whole wall was full with them. And I don't know how they extracted them, but it's weird. It's a weird science, like to to conserve a smell
Yeah.
and to save,
Sure.
to capture it. Yes.
Like in the same way you can with just recording, like we are now recording these moments of like people will see, they will see you, they will hear us, but they won't feel our skin, they won't feel a touch, they won't smell what the incense or whatever, the cinnamon from you. Uh,
Yeah. How do you
uh,
know I smell like cinnamon?
it's like that psychic thing. Um, but yeah, and that's a very evocative thought for me. especially with like virtual reality now, because they're, we're people are pushing the boundaries of touch, like you can feel like the brain will like stimulate a certain touch if the hallucination is strong enough. And I wonder how that will relate to smell. Because yeah, there's this very physical aspect of the molecules or whatever, the chemical reactions that we need to kind of or henceforth we've needed to like be in the presence of. And it'll be like very interesting, like on a philosophical and artistic level to see if people break the boundaries more.
Do you ever dream of smelling something?
Yeah, I do.
Hmm, that's interesting. I'm not sure if I do.
Yeah, people were, I think this will be great if we're collecting dreams. So if you're in the audience, let us know about your dreams because we'd love to collect more. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Smell one.
yeah, it would be really interesting research to, I don't know what the constructs are, but like if you could correlate dreams with how dominant certain senses are for the person, if they're visually dominant, if they're I remember I had a relationship, it's someone like an acquaintance, not a patient, but they were very sensate,
Mhm.
and their unconscious would more so speak to them less so through dreams and more so through their embodied experience. So like they took a lot of meaning if they were like moving through the world and like dropping their keys or bumping into things, they would take that as very significant.
Oh.
They would they'd be like, what's going on? Why am I bumping into something? But it had to be for them physical,
Mhm.
like physical thing to bump in, drop, lose things. And that was
Yeah, sorry. I can't relate because I'm having this sunburn. I'm like, oh wow, what's the meaning of this? I mean,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
also like a symptom, maybe like symptoms of illness, symptoms of sickness, of certain conditions. That's very much connected to this, I guess, because if a person is so sensitive to even question if they drop their keys or maybe stub their toe or cut their finger when cooking, I think that's like it might be a precursor. Like if you overlook stuff like that and don't take it seriously, then maybe, I don't know, you run into having greater accidents, maybe greater illnesses, to make to catch your attention at some point. Maybe unconscious is wanting your attention at some point.
Yeah, it's prophetic. It's like a prophecy. Uh, yeah, Jung has this one quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your life and you'll call it fate. And so there's this idea of like, yeah, like disaster, something about our life is being organized towards a disaster. We might not know exactly what it is, but this, you know, not being present in the body is going to lead to you like walking off a cliff or whatever happens or getting in a car accident and being able to say, oh, I'm not I can't be in my body right now. And then it's like, oh, it's because I hate the home I live in. It's uncomfortable to me and I can't bear that because I'm stuck here for another year.
Yeah.
Um, that's a lot to face.
But it's such a good point because you were, yeah, we were talking about this, like the digital age, and it's so visually oriented. And maybe, of course, there's audio as well, but the other senses, they are dismissed, but then they are so important to have well-being. Like, if you ask anybody what's well-being, I'm sure at some point they will bring up something that has to do with how their body feels, or how it feels to be in a situation that can be described as well-being, like taking a bath, or I don't know, having sun shining onto your face, or smelling the air in the forest, whatever. But it's or being relaxed, it also is a somatic experience, right?
Mhm. Yes.
And I think as long as imagination is only visual, it's not embodied.
Mm. Yeah. And like if it's not embodied, if our imagination is, I feel that it's limited is one thing, but going back to the self, I think one thing I've been exploring, like this motto I've been exploring, is empathy is a weapon against self hatred and social conformity. And I think self hatred and social conformity are major blocks, obstacles to the kind of work we're wanting to do in analytical psychology, which is to connect with the self healing properties of the archetypal self. And if you're too oriented to what culture wants you to be, and if you hate who you are, I mean, obviously it's going to be hard to connect with that. And I just feel like it's very easy for the visual um, channel, which by the way is beautiful. I'm a very visual person. I love the visual, but it's very easy for that channel to be kind of colonized or to be filled with images that are very surface level, really.
Yeah.
And the embodied. There's only so many ways you can embody something. Like it's not as diffuse, really. It's very diffuse, but I just feel it helps us connect with a more archetypal, deeper level. There's
Mm.
many images of feeling of peace or violence, right? But there's a very visceral, somatic experience of danger or comfort. You know what I mean? Um,
Yes.
yeah, and I think like the kind of pause and this emptying process is it's good. It's
Could you
helpful.
repeat?
Like
Yeah.
the emptying process, like the kind of pausing and slowing down
Mhm.
um
Does
before
that
any.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
The emptying, does it relate in your point of view to the social conformity or to self-hatred in a way?
Yeah, it does. Um, because that's just so dominant, like that those kind of concerns. If we wanted to put it into analytical psychology level, uh, language, we have like a persona,
Mhm.
like we have a tool, a mask that helps us relate to society.
Yeah.
And what I love about analytical psychology and Jung is that it's not like many spiritual traditions are like destroy, like rip your mask off, burn it, and just be a raw hippie, or whatever. And hey, that's cool. But I think one thing unique about analytical psychology is like wear it, like because it's about being conscious of consciousness is like very primary. And so like, oh, I feel like I need to be liked.
Yeah, and also they like a persona has great functions to fulfill for you as a person.
Hmm.
So
So
not everybody, yeah, I mean, I think you already did the point.
not everyone. I'm curious.
Can run around like being their true self. It's a bit disturbing for everyone, especially when you're still trying to build a life, when you're still trying to make friends maybe or to have relationships.
I want to tell an anecdote. Um, okay. About, I feel like I really discovered on a personal level the life-giving process or the potential for relaxing from the persona and taking it off and being more raw about a year and a half ago. And I became very intoxicated by it, by doing this. And I disturbed many people in my life because I called it the, what did I call it? The authenticity project. I had a 3-month authenticity project. I told my therapist I was in love with her. I told many people I was in love with them, actually. Um, I was just very authentic to what I felt. And it was a big relief, but it was also extremely destabilizing to my relationships. And I wish in the future I would do it with much more tact and less intensity, because certain relationships ended or had to be put on a pause because the, we just went from one extreme, which was me being very reserved, to another extreme, which was me just being very raw. And it was disturbing and
Wow.
frightening to people in my life. It felt really good. Um, and I'm glad I had the experience, but I will definitely temper it in the future. Um, and on some level, I think it needed to happen, but I feel guilt. It felt a bit indulgent. And then what did I want to say? I wanted to say one more thing. Um, but it also may have been necessary to rebalance myself. So I'm not saying don't be raw.
Oh, yeah, maybe even to find the positive qualities about your persona or finding something that you wanna put on as a mask to maybe not to disturb people, maybe to have acquaintances, balancing out like the need for authenticity and finding places where this is where the relationship can support the level of authenticity that you put into it and distinguishing between different settings, contexts. But I mean, it's courageous. I wouldn't dare to do it, actually. Sometimes I play these things in my head, I imagine like saying something weird or odd or disturbing in a context that I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah, and then I try to, imagine also the reactions to that. And most of the time it's really funny. But then at some point it gets like there's always also something negative about it.
Mm.
But it helps me to, at least in my imagination, I said it. So it's not pressing so much to do it in reality because I've played it through in a way.
It's really interesting.
Does it make sense?
It does, yeah. Yeah, I relate to that. I also imagine sometimes I act on it, unfortunately. Um,
I
uh,
guess I'm too reserved. I don't know.
I wonder if there's something cultural here too, because I noticed when I was in Switzerland, like something we do in the Midwest of the US that disturbed some of my Swiss friends was when there's a baby,
Yeah.
oftentimes people, strangers, will start like doing baby talk and like playing with the strange child. And I did this in Switzerland, and this adorable family, I just will never forget their face. They were like scared. They were horrified by this. They were like, who's this strange man uh in the middle of the night, like in a coffee shop, like making faces at my child.
Yeah,
And
and they're like, "Oh no, you're right."
yeah, and I was like, why did this feel so odd? And I was like, wait, I'm in a completely different country. And I was became conscious of what I was doing, which is bizarre, but it's just something I don't know culturally in the Midwest. It's some kind of neighborly, like we let that impulse of like, oh, a cute baby, let me play with it, come out a little. It's a little less reserved in that way. Of course, we're reserved in other ways.
Mm.
Um, but so that's one aspect of it. And then another aspect I've been thinking of is I came up with this concept of I don't know if I came up with it, but I have to Google if someone else said this, but I think of it as amygdala authenticity.
What's that?
So the amygdala is like the part of the brain that's just raw, like impulse.
Mm.
And I think it's not quite authenticity if I'm just acting on every impulse. And that's actually like a kind of slavery.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so I think having consciousness, like, oh, I have this impulse to express something I'm feeling is step one. And then to be authentic is to express that in a way that's also conscientious of other people and empathetic. So
Wow. Yeah. That's such a it's such a great addition to the concept of authenticity is to ask yourself like what parts of me do I want to include when being authentic? Is it feelings? Is it thoughts? Is it impulses? Is it instincts? Is it ideals maybe that I have?
yeah. And I think that exactly what do I want to show? And this is persona work, it's wearing the persona consciously. And maybe for some people like me that had it on very tight, there
Mm.
had to be a moment of opening it. But now I feel myself more, you know, opening it, putting it on more
Mm.
consciously. And this is something I think is quite unique about analytical psychology. I've really not heard it in other places that are often about kind of very aggressively ripping it off. And I think pragmatically, um, it's not kind to yourself, to ourselves, and our.
Yeah. It can also it can even be harmful. I'm thinking the persona is also something that protects us, you know. As it is a mask, we also protect vulnerable parts of ourselves and parts maybe that are easily disturbed. So, as with any other mechanism that is designed to protect you, if somebody were to rip it off of you, you you clinch to it even more to
Mm,
not to not lose it, you know, because it's important that we have such strategies to protect us, like armor basically. And of course it's nice if you can decide on your own, like, do I want to wear this right now, like this armor, this mask, whatever, or do I put it off a bit, maybe open it, or do I want to keep it? And if you never have any done any work with yourself, you might not even be aware that you were wearing this. So I do of course see the point in trying to put it off, but then if this is helpful for you in situations, you want to have it actually. It doesn't help to not be able to have it with you. For example, like in the trauma therapy, I guess it's often about developing strategies to to deal with threatening experiences. Like, um, do you know the image rehearsal therapy? Yeah, for nightmares, for example. Like you imagine how could this dream become more easy? How could I handle this better? And you, of course, you imagine things that would protect you or save you in some way. And I think the persona is also an aspect that's a protector aspect.
mm. Yeah. And we want that on our side, whether we're working with patients or ourselves, is um, trying to make it less of an enemy and more of a ally.
Yeah. So, Brian, what do you think? We've been covering some senses like the smell and the bodily sensations, and then different dimensions, consciousness, been covering a bit of trauma, a bit of art, of beauty.
What a beautiful conversation. That's what I think. Um, it'll be interesting to make sense of it. We talked about at the beginning, like it's kind of like we're kind of making it. How did you say it? You said it so beautifully, like I think apropos of some of the anti-planning that we were talking about. Yeah, like we kind of sketched out s- sketched out um the podcast, and I think change is a big theme. You know, what does healing and how do we go from a state of whether it's disease to ease or chaos to beauty? Like, what's that kind of process like? I think everything we touched on, I think we were circumambulating that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm actually thinking of the podcast as a thing that will emerge at some point beautifully, hopefully, like in a process of apamitosis.
Yeah.
And right now I see ourselves meandering between those realms, like exploring, like what's there? Can we find some like threads to pull together, and how does it work? And I'm actually not I don't feel too much pressure to like put it into one box right now and to give it a name and to say like, okay, this is this. But there's still a bit of a need to, I don't know, just look at what we've talked about, and then we can give it a rest until the next episode, like to cook a little, you know?
Mm, that's good. It feels mysterious. Like it feels like there's a